Welcome to The Explainer. Corporate earnings reports, they can be pretty dense, right? But believe it or not, there's usually a pretty simple story hidden inside all those numbers. And today, we're going to find it.
So, we're diving into Duke Energy's 2025 annual results. But here's the thing, this isn't just about Duke. My goal here is that by the time we're done, you'll have the tools to look at any financial report and see the real story behind the numbers.
All right, let's jump right in. What's the big news? What's the main takeaway from their big announcement?
Well, to put it simply, 2025 was a really good year for them. Duke Energy serves millions of people across 6 states, and they basically reported that they knocked it out of the park, exceeding their financial goals and finishing the year on a real high note.
And you can hear that confidence in the quote from their CEO, Harry Sidaris. The tone is super clear, it's all about performance, it's all about momentum. The takeaway isn't just we finished strong, it's more like we're already hitting the ground running for next year.
Okay, so finishing strong sounds great, right? But how do you actually measure that? What are the numbers? Well, it really boils down to a few key things, and probably the most important one is something called EPS.
Yeah, earnings per share, EPS. You can kind of think of it as the ultimate bottom line number. It just cuts through all the corporate jargon and tells you, plain and simple, how much profit the company made for every single share of its stock. It's a really fundamental way to see how healthy a company is.
And boom, you can see that growth crystal clear right here on this chart. Their adjusted EPS went from $5.90 in 2024 all the way up to $6.31 in 2025. That is a really solid jump, and it's the hard data that proves the CEO wasn't just talking a big game.
So you're probably asking, okay, how'd they do it? Where did that growth come from? Well, according to the report, it's mainly 2 things. First, all that money they've been pouring into upgrading the grid, it's finally starting to pay off. And second, they're just seeing more customers and higher demand in the areas they cover. The really impressive part, they pulled this off while keeping their rates lower than the national average.
Okay, so 2025 was a great year. We get it, but that's the past. What about the future? Where is all this heading? Well, let me tell you, their plans are pretty ambitious.
The absolute centerpiece of their whole announcement is this huge 5-year capital plan. And that number you're looking at, yeah, that's $103 billion. It's actually the largest plan of its kind in the entire industry. This is basically their master plan for the next 5 years.
And they're not just spending this money to, keep the lights on. This is all about a major shift in their energy strategy. A big chunk is going to modernizing the grid for sure, but a ton of it is also aimed at cleaner energy. We're talking the whole spectrum: natural gas, nuclear, renewables, even battery storage.
So why does any of this matter? Well, because they're preparing for what looks like a tidal wave of new energy demand. They specifically talk about powering new industries like AI, data centers, and advanced manufacturing. And you got to understand, these things are incredibly power hungry. They need a massive, constant flow of electricity. Duke is basically making a huge bet that they're going to be the ones to provide it.
Okay, quick but super important detour. If you read these reports, you're going to see 2 different sets of numbers: reported earnings and adjusted earnings. It can be a little confusing, so let's break down what that really means.
Reported EPS is the official by-the-book number. It has to follow all the strict accounting rules. But adjusted EPS is where the company says, okay, let's take out any weird one-time stuff. They call them special items. Things that aren't part of their normal, everyday business. The idea is to give you a clearer, more honest look at how the core business is really doing.
So let's look at their 2024 numbers for a sec. Their official reported EPS was $5.71. But then they said, hold on, let's adjust for some stuff, like some one-time regulatory charges and costs from a big storm. Once they took those out of the equation, their adjusted EPS popped up to $5.90. See the difference? Now here's what's really interesting. For 2025, the numbers are identical. Reported and adjusted EPS are both $6.31. So what does that mean? It means there weren't any of those weird special items to adjust for. It signals a really clean, straightforward year for them, operationally speaking. But, no business story is all sunshine and rainbows. We have to look at the other side of the coin. What could possibly go wrong? What are the big risks on the horizon? So every public company has to include a section like this. It's required. It's often called forward-looking information. And it's basically the company laying out all the things that could mess up their plans and make their future results look different from their forecasts.
And the big takeaway here is just to be aware of all the things that are outside of their direct control. For a company like Duke, we're talking about new government rules, the massive costs of extreme weather events like hurricanes, and of course, the constant threat of cyber attacks. These are the wild cards that could really change the game for them.
So that leaves us with this final big question. On one hand, you have a company that's doing really well financially, and they have this massive $100 billion plan to power the future of tech like AI. But on the other hand, you have all these risks we just talked about. And how they handle those risks, well, that's what's going to determine if this ambitious plan actually becomes our new reality.